You had risen, were actually the second person I'd seen, so I would like to go to you, Senator from Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Communicate with the body, please.
Please proceed.
Mr. President, I know it's been a long day with a lot of bills, and I will try to be brief with my comments, but I'll be remiss. Many times on this floor, we've talked about media reporting on certain stories and stories that sometimes get maybe put on the page 12 of a newspaper and not on the front page, and we can't determine what actually goes on the front page or not. But I've always been told of stories that make above the fold are pretty high-profile stories that many of the readers are likely to take notice of. And today is no exception to that. When I read the headline, "Report Cracks Open, Black Box of Medicaid Pharmacy System," Kentucky's middlemen benefit managers took in $123 million in state dollars last year. I want to thank, on the front row here, Debbie Yetter and the Courier-Journal for exposing this story they've been working on, because many newspapers across the country have been opening this black box. And I go back to a time, probably in the mid-90s, some people in here may remember the movie Seven. Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. At the very end of the movie, there was a box there. What's in the box? What's in the box? You didn't want to open the box because you didn't know what's inside. The same thing with the black box. Some people may be afraid of actually what's in that black box. The PBMs and the MCOs making $123 million in profit in 1 year alone, which represents almost $337,000 in spread pricing per day. I'm not going to get into specifics on the whole MCO, PBM. As you all know, it is a very, very complicated ordeal. And as a senator from Hardin once told me, "Senator Wise, you're going into the jungle." Well, we carried a machete with that one, Senator Hardin. And I will tell you, it takes an investigator to get to the bottom of this, because it is truly an investigation, and it is one that we will continue in this Commonwealth to expose because of taxpayer dollars and dollars that need to be going back to our pharmacists across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And the article even points out by the CVS spokeswoman that MCOs pick plans presented by the PBMs, quote, that best fit their needs. Their needs. Not the needs of taxpayers, not the needs of Medicaid recipients, and not the needs of community pharmacies, but of their needs. And while they take $337,000 per day, pharmacists are only getting 85 cents in dispensing fees when they fill a prescription. So while the PBMs and the MCOs took at a minimum $123 million in profits in that year, the following pharmacies closed their doors last year alone in the Commonwealth due to pitiful reimbursements. Breathitt Prescription in Jackson, the Clinic Pharmacy in Salyersville, the Whitehead Drugstore in Louisville, Midway Pharmacy in Big Clifty, Redbird Pharmacy in Redbird, Food City Pharmacy in Hazard, and East Bernstadt Clinic in East Bernstadt. Now that $123 million, that's a conservative number, folks. That's a conservative number. That doesn't include mail order pharmacy, and that also doesn't include one of the other biggest MCOs in this Commonwealth that didn't report, that being WellCare. I have judgment to say it's probably $500 million when we get to the bottom of this. I appreciate the Cabinet and the Department of Medicaid Services for the work that they're doing since this body overwhelmingly passed Senate Bill 5 last year. The Office of Data Analytics is working tirelessly on this, and they made recommendations in the report that was given, which the Courier-Journal reported, of eliminating spread pricing and other recommendations that I think this body needs to look at. And I know we're at day 15 of a 30-day session, but this is a topic that is not going to go away. Our Commonwealth is leading on this. Other states are looking at this, Mr. President. The eye is on Kentucky. The eye is on the MCOs. The eye is on the PBMs to play by the rules and to do what's right to the taxpayers of this Commonwealth. Once again, we are just scratching the surface. And I'm going to leave this body one day, and we will look back, as I've said on day one, and many others in this chamber that this state was taken advantage of. They're not giving back, they're not playing by the rules, and the practice is going to stop. And it's going to stop here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And I know I've got other members back here be happy to speak on this, Mr. President, and I'm going to yield to the senator from Clark for comments.
Senator from Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the senator from Taylor, obviously been a champion on this issue. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of sitting in Health and Welfare Committee to hear a lot of the testimony regarding this issue, I would encourage you to go back and watch some of that testimony. I know we can read things in the newspaper, but I would encourage you to read it for yourself in this report that was put out yesterday by the Cabinet. And it's titled Opening the Black Box. We've got about $600+ million missing in Medicaid. And when we asked the Cabinet, their response was, well, we contract with the MCOs for that pharmaceutical costs. When we asked the managed care organizations, where did this money go? Well, we don't know. We give it to the pharmacy benefit managers to manage the pharmacy costs for our patients in Medicaid. And they couldn't give us a direct answer. When we asked the pharmacy benefit managers, they basically said, it's none of your business. You don't have a right to that information. We passed Senate Bill 5 last year to open this up, to start taking a look. We know what we've heard from other states about this issue. We knew West Virginia got rid of their pharmacy benefit managers. They've realized about a $50 million savings in their Medicaid system because of that. We took a look at the data, and if you take a look at what's in here, it's $123 million for last year, but $210 million over the last 2 years. The data that's released only shows a partial amount of the $1.69 billion of managed care pharmacy spend that the MCOs and PBMs are keeping for themselves. And like the senator from Taylor says, we're just scratching the surface on this. I know a lot of us are concerned about the viability of Passport. If you take a look at the report, $47 million of those dollars last year was Passport. They didn't know where this money was going. And they're here filing suit against the Commonwealth right now for their rates. I would encourage the press to take a look at that in more detail and wonder why the $75 million they've had in the last 2 years doesn't account towards their profitability. Where is that money going? The data, like the senator from Taylor said, only accounts for 4 of the 5 MCOs. It doesn't take into account additional profits that the PBMs and MCOs are making off post-claim fees, mail order, or specialty drugs. And it also doesn't disclose their negotiated rebates with drug manufacturers. There's a major national problem on drug transparency and how that cost goes. I think most of you would be amazed at how much of that money is kept by the PBMs as part of their negotiated rates. As the Cabinet gets closer to getting full answers, the PBMs are becoming more hostile against data collection, including one PBM sending a cease and desist letter to the Cabinet to suppress disclosure. Senate Bill 5 also required the disclosure of direct and indirect fees by PBMs on pharmacies. This information still hasn't been disclosed to us. PBMs and MCOs try to use confusion to their benefit in hopes that it will cripple the ability of the Cabinet and the legislature to create change. And as long as I serve in this capacity, and I expect as long as the senator from Taylor serves in this capacity, this issue is not going to go away until we get the full information out there. In my opinion, if these organizations aren't willing to comply with their contracts or with the law, then the Cabinet should fine them significantly or get rid of them altogether. And if the Cabinet can't manage the contracts, they should end them. It really is time that we take a stand against companies making massive profits at the expense of taxpayers. And we should take the lead of other states. Like I mentioned, Ohio acted when the spread for them was 8.9%. That spread is how much they're keeping in profits. Right now, if a company, like an MCO, manages with a PBM, they'll give them the money. The PBMs will take what they want and transfer the rest to the pharmacies. That's what we call the spread. That amount was 8.9% in Ohio. Our MCOs right now have a spread of 12.9%. You know, the MCOs are supposed to have a medical loss ratio of 10% or less as far as their profitability and all their administrative costs rolled into that. Anything beyond that should be returned to the state. My question is, how much of that spread is being sent back to our MCOs and not being declared as part of their medical loss ratios? If so, that money needs to be recouped and put back into our Medicaid program. We couldn't open up a lot of our slots when it came to folks with disabilities, people that had issues with brain trusts. We had slots that were needed and required. People within Michelle P. Waiver, money that could have drawn down federal dollars that is instead going into this black box, into this hidden hole that we have no idea where this is coming from. And this is $210 million over the past 2 years. There's about 1.4 million people in Medicaid, and that's about $75 per person per year to manage medications for every patient in Medicaid, many of which don't even need medicines and require no management. This is an outrage, and it needs to be looked into more deeply. Again, I've said this in committee many times, we're dealing with individuals that are dishonest with the state. And frankly, when you dissolve your trust It's really, really hard to get that back. We need to do a bigger dive, and I commend the cabinet on this report. I think they were as angry as we were when they discovered this information, and they got to get to the bottom of it or change this altogether, either determine what the contracts are going to show going forward. But I would encourage every member, if you haven't read this, read it for yourself. Don't trust what other people report to you. Pick up this in Medicaid pharmacy pricing and look at the report itself. I think you'll be astonished. And Mr. President, if it's all right with you, I'm going to yield to the senator from Grayson for further commentary.
Senator from Grayson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We were certainly very appreciative to receive this information yesterday, but what's really ironic about this, it's no surprise to us. We've known it for months. We think there's $500 million there that's unaccounted for. So it's very disconcerting to think that we have to go to these efforts to find out this information. And what's really sad about this is the people most affected by it, these community pharmacists, they've been crying about this for literally years now, and no one would listen to them. This isn't corporate America. These are our neighbors and our friends. These are people who are vital components of our healthcare delivery system on the rural level, and no one would listen to them. People have stolen from them. We pass on a hidden tax to them that no one else should have to bear, and it's got to be corrected. But what is really tragic about this situation, it's just the tip of the iceberg. You think it's just pharmacy that's affected by this? You know, today we heard a bill, my bill, 149, that deals with bundling appeals, because the MCOs will just capriciously and arbitrarily decide we're not going to pay for something. And they'll reject hundreds and hundreds of claims because our current laws, our current statutes say you can't bundle those together. You have to appeal each one of them individually. And the MCOs know that's not going to happen, because it literally costs those providers hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. This is a very unfortunate game that should not be played with healthcare providers. I've been in this business for 40 years, and many of you who have attended our Health and Welfare Committee meetings and Medicaid oversight, you've heard me say, for almost 40 years of my career, it's been an adversarial relationship for healthcare providers in the Medicaid program. It should not be that way. The only thing that works in life is symbiotic relationships, and there's not one here. So we're actually awaiting this additional information, and again, I think we'll bear out our suspicions that this may be as much as $500 million that's misdirected, and hopefully we can bring it back to the right place. But we can't let it in here. We've got to change this whole culture with the MCOs and with the Department for Medicaid. We have to have a partnership within our state with our providers. And I know you're tired of hearing me say this, but no one understands, apparently, or appreciates how precarious the healthcare delivery system is in rural Kentucky right now. When I was in the business, the average profit margin for a rural hospital was 2 cents on the dollar. Today, it's less than 0.5%. Do you know any business that can survive that way? You know, we've got this pension crisis we have to deal with. I'm telling you, the next crisis on the horizon, if we don't address it in the short term, is going to be the healthcare delivery system for Kentucky. And as these providers continue to struggle with this and they go out of business or they move to other communities, what happens to healthcare then? It just becomes more difficult. The whole delivery system becomes more exasperated. People are going to die as a result of it. And it does not have to be this way. I promise you again, there's enough money in the healthcare delivery system to take care of man, woman, and child in this country. We spend $11 billion in this state on Medicaid. I'm telling you, there's enough money there for good healthcare for everyone if we just spend it the right way. But quite candidly, in my short tenure here, I'm tired of fighting tooth and nail with folks to make common sense changes to how we do this. And I'm telling you, they are common sense. But it seems the focus is how many people can we possibly provide care to within $11 billion? That's not the right approach. The right approach should be, how can we improve the health of this Commonwealth? And I guarantee you, we do that, everybody will profit. The state will profit. We'll have money to expand services. Even the MCOs will make money. But that's not the way it is today. We truly have a tragedy on the horizon. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So I'm very anxious to see what the cabinet does next with this information, what we're able to do with it. But I'm particularly proud, particularly the senator from Taylor, that you did Senate Bill 5, because we did not ignore this problem. We heard our constituents, the people who count on us to do our job every day. But we should never have had to pass Senate Bill 5. Someone should have heard their cries. But I thank you for that and proud of this chamber that we passed that legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Order of businesses, motions, petitions, communications, and announcements. Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. To speak on the PBM issue,
Please
just
proceed.
a little longer. Thank you, Mr. President. I commend the Senator from Taylor, Senator from Clark, and Senator from Grayson for their work on this issue. I've also filed an additional bill, Senate Bill 139, that we'll be hearing about. And it doesn't deal with the black box spread of pricing that the Senator from Taylor has worked on and was revealed to us the other day. There's a lot of other issues out there, Mr. President, and our independent pharmacies in Kentucky face extinction if we don't deal with this issue. And right now, currently, not only do we have the spread pricing that we're dealing with, currently at the end of the month, the PBMs are actually going back and they agree to a price and pay the pharmacy a particular price for a prescription, and then at a later date go back and do a clawback and take back part of that money that they've paid the pharmacy. And again, it's an issue that we had to look at, and like I said, Senate Bill 139 will continue to some of the work that the Senator from Taylor has started, and look forward to working with this body with that legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.